"That's not his coffee order," the man said. Laughter. Then her voice, bright, fast, almost smug. "Please. He still thinks I don't drink espresso." That line landed like a dart behind my ribs. I didn't know whose espresso she meant, not mine, clearly. I sat perfectly still, my back to her, my hands around a ceramic mug I couldn't feel anymore. The cafe smelled like wet pavement and burned beans, and for a second, I wished I'd sat closer to the door. "Does he ever suspect anything?" the woman next to her asked. A pause. Muffled stirring of a spoon against a saucer. "No," she said. "He doesn't look for what he doesn't want to find." Someone said savage under their breath. More laughter. That low, secret kind that people reserve for sins they enjoy too much to regret. They were 2 feet behind me. One chair scrape. A shift in weight. And then another sound, one that didn't belong in a morning meeting. A slow breath, sucked through teeth. The kind people make when remembering something physical. Someone muttered, "You're insane." And she said, "Insane? I still have bruises from Sunday. Worth it." I didn't blink. I wanted the cup in my hand to shatter. I wanted to bleed quietly into the saucer. I wanted something loud to happen, anything to drown them out, but the cafe was a calm, humming place. Indie music, clinking dishes, cheerful baristas. The exact setting where lives go unnoticed when they unravel. I stayed there, listening to my wife talk about a life I didn't know she was living. She mentioned someone named Reed. Reed, apparently, drove her home once when she was too sore to walk properly. I closed my eyes then. She didn't see me. I made sure of it. I stared at my reflection in the spoon, warped and stupid. I was background noise. Furniture. The extra in her story. The man who paid for the wedding and watered the garden. By the time they stood up to leave, she was mid-sentence. So I told Reed if we ever get caught, I'll just say we were strategizing. Strategizing. That's what she called it. And that's when I realized she hadn't forgotten me. She'd replaced me. She walked right past my table. "Reed." I finally got a good look at him, brushed her hand lightly with 2 fingers as they crossed the exit. She smiled, but it wasn't the way she used to smile when we had nowhere to be and all afternoon to waste. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they know they're being watched, even when they aren't. She was glowing, confident, almost reckless. She never looked at me. Her eyes moved across the cafe like scanning a room she owned. For a moment, I actually thought she saw me and just didn't care. That she had seen me sitting there with my cold coffee and frozen face and thought, so what? But then I realized the truth was worse. She didn't see me because I didn't exist to her here. In this version of her world, I was an old layer she'd already peeled off. The coffee was still warm, but I couldn't swallow it. My throat wouldn't cooperate. My hand trembled when I tried to pick it up again, and I set it down quickly like someone might notice. But no one did. No one ever does when you're the ghost in your own marriage. I sat in that cafe 10 minutes after she left, just trying to stitch reality back into something I could hold. Then I paid. Walked 3 blocks without knowing where I was headed. Eventually, I ended up in the parking garage where I left my car. I sat in the driver's seat for almost an hour, staring at the steering wheel, thinking, what's the right way to react when you hear your wife joke about her affair in public? Because no one ever teaches you that. There's no manual. No instinct. You think it'll be like the movies, anger, confrontation, shouting, maybe a dramatic walkout. But the truth is, it's silence. It's your own mind turning against you with every scene you replay. Did I miss signs? Was I blind? Or was I just convenient? A safe place to land while she built her real life on the side? I didn't go home that afternoon. I didn't text her. I didn't drive anywhere specific. I just kept looping around side streets, glancing at my own reflection in the rearview mirror like I was studying a stranger. She'd kissed me last night. Kissed me like nothing was broken. And now I couldn't even remember what it felt like. It was gone. Replaced. Overwritten. Erased in a single hour by a laugh, a coffee, and the wrong name. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside her, listening to the sound of her steady breathing. She smelled like citrus shampoo and vanilla, like she always did. And yet, for the first time in over a decade, I couldn't stand the scent. It felt like a disguise now. Something designed to comfort me while she lived another life just outside the lines of ours. She stirred in her sleep once, whispered something. I couldn't catch it. I wanted to believe it was nothing. But it didn't sound like my name. I just stared at the ceiling and counted the seconds until the sun came up, unsure of what to do with the information in my head. There's no hotline for this. No warning label that says, if your wife casually laughs about cheating on you over coffee with colleagues, press 2 for emotional paralysis. The next morning, I called in sick. I lied. Said I had a fever. In a way, I did, just not the kind that shows up on thermometers. Marlene left the house at 7:48 a.m. wearing a red coat I hadn't seen before. I stood at the upstairs window and watched her get into her car. She didn't look back, not even out of habit, as if I wasn't part of the morning anymore. As soon as she turned the corner, I sat down at her desk in the den. She usually kept her work things in a neat little folder: laptop, charger, external drive, notepad. I had no idea what I was looking for, just that I needed proof this wasn't all a misunderstanding. I needed my own eyes to see what my ears had heard. Her laptop was password protected. Of course. I typed in our wedding date. Wrong. Her mother's maiden name. Wrong. Then I tried my own name. Still wrong. I sat back in the chair and almost laughed. There was something symbolic about being locked out of her digital world, too. But just as I was about to shut the lid, I noticed her phone had buzzed. A calendar alert. Read, hotel check-in, 12:30 p.m. My stomach dropped so fast I almost doubled over. I knew the name. I remembered the laugh. And now I had a time and a location. This wasn't emotional ambiguity anymore. This wasn't just office flirting or vague betrayal. This was coordination, planning, a relationship that had structure and rhythm and repetition. This was not a mistake. It was maintenance. I went back to the laptop and opened the browser. I clicked Saved Passwords, and to my surprise, the autofill wasn't locked. One click and I had access to all the accounts she'd stored over the years. One stood out, an email I didn't recognize. I clicked it. It opened without resistance. No two-factor, no security prompt. Just access. Inside were emails going back months, hidden under a name I'd never seen. Tasha V. That was the alias. And buried in the threads was something I can't unsee: a hotel receipt, her name, his name, check-in dates, notes like "bring that same blue dress," and "he won't be home Tuesday." I read each line like a death notice. But there was one email that nearly made me pass out. Subject line: need to tell him soon. He's catching on. So she knew. She knew I was watching her from the shadows. And she didn't care. At 12:12 p.m., I was already parked across the street from the Halbram Hotel, a dull gray building with mirrored glass windows that reflected nothing but clouds. I sat in my car like a stakeout agent in an old movie, engine off, hoodie up, sunglasses on. I didn't even know what I expected to see. Maybe her walking in alone. Maybe both of them. Maybe a scene dramatic enough to justify how sick I felt. But I wasn't prepared for how ordinary it looked when it happened. At exactly 12:29, Marlene pulled up in her car and walked in, calm, composed, like it was just another stop between errands. 10 minutes later, Reed showed up in a different car, blue sedan, rental sticker on the bumper, wearing a blazer and jeans like this was some kind of vacation. He didn't hesitate. Didn't even check his phone. He walked in like a man coming home. I waited until 12:50. Just long enough for the check-in process. Just long enough for the elevator to ding and for a room door to click shut. Then I stepped out. I wasn't thinking clearly. I know that now. But something in me needed to get closer, not to confront, not to explode, just to see. I entered the lobby like a ghost. The clerk didn't look up. No one cared. I passed the front desk and stood near the elevator, pretending to wait for someone. And then, by sheer luck, or maybe cruelty from above, one of the elevators opened. A maid rolled out a cart, and the moment she turned the corner, I stepped in before the doors closed. No one stopped me. No one asked questions. I hit the button for the 7th floor. I had no idea what room they were in, but the email had mentioned that number. The elevator hummed upward. I felt like I was floating toward the end of something I hadn't agreed to let go of. And then it happened. The elevator stopped on 6. I didn't press it. The doors opened. No one was there. I waited. Still empty. But then, as the doors started to close again, I saw a movement. A silhouette through the crack. Someone had started walking toward the elevator but turned around at the last second. They didn't want to be seen. I hit the emergency open. Nothing. Doors sealed. I couldn't tell who it was. I don't even know why it shook me so badly. Maybe because everything that day had felt too perfect, too choreographed, like I was 5 steps behind a script they were writing together. On the 7th floor, I walked the carpeted hallway like I was sleepwalking. My heart wasn't beating right. Every sound made me flinch: a door latch, a voice on TV, a room service card. Then I saw it. Room 714. A red scarf hanging from the doorknob. The same one Marlene had worn 3 weeks ago to a dinner we had with her sister. I stood there, 3 feet from it. I never knocked. I never tried the handle. I didn't need to. Because suddenly, I heard something from inside, not voices, not moans, not the sounds you'd expect. I heard silence. That perfect, muffled quiet of people who know they're doing something they shouldn't. And that was worse. Because it meant they were careful. It meant they were practiced. This wasn't heat of the moment. It was scheduled. Efficient. Clean. I walked away without a photo. Without proof. But also without doubt. And as I stepped into the elevator again, this time alone, I looked at the camera in the corner and realized something sickening. If I had been 5 minutes later, it could have been filming all three of us. One man who thought he was a husband. One who knew he wasn't. And one woman who had already chosen which face she preferred. I didn't go home right away after leaving that hotel. I drove aimlessly, without music, windows closed, the city drifting past like a slideshow I didn't remember signing up for. I didn't know where I was going until I pulled into the parking lot of a hardware store and just sat there. I wasn't there to buy anything. I just needed to exist somewhere no one expected me to be. That's how my life felt now, like I was out of frame in my own story. Marlene didn't text that day. No, how's your day? No, pick up milk. Not even a fake check-in. She used to be obsessive with those. But now that I knew about Reed, now that I'd seen that red scarf, I realized her silence wasn't absence, it was strategy. A safe space to cheat in. The less she said, the less she had to keep track of. That night, I waited until she fell asleep. She always slept with her phone on the charger beside the bed, screen face down, as if she knew it had secrets to hide. At 2:14 a.m., I carefully turned the phone over. No password screen. She'd unlocked it earlier and never locked it again. She trusted me. That's what wrecked me. I wasn't breaking into something. I was trespassing in a place she never thought I'd look. I didn't go through her text first. I went straight to photos. There was a hidden album. Nothing obscene, she wasn't stupid. But in there were 12 photos I hadn't taken. One of her smiling in a mirror with her ring off. One of a cocktail glass on someone else's thigh. A hotel hallway that matched the one I had just walked through. One picture showed her hand holding a room key, with the edge of someone else's wrist in frame, a man's wrist, judging by the veins and watch. But what gutted me most wasn't even the images. It was a short screen recording. A voice message sent to Reed. She'd recorded it as a video but never posted or sent it. 31 seconds long. Her face was lit by a hotel bathroom bulb. She was laughing but trying to keep quiet. And in the background, someone, he, was calling her back to bed. She looked into the camera and said, "I don't know how much longer I can pretend. I want to tell him, but every time I try, he brings me tea or folds the laundry and I don't know. I hate how kind he is." She paused. "Maybe I'll wait until after Christmas. That seems fair." I locked the phone, slowly, and placed it back. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just sat there, heart completely silent, as if my body had decided not to feel anything else until I gave it permission. She rolled over in her sleep and mumbled my name. Said it like a child asking for water in the night. And I knew in that moment, she loved who I was, but not enough to stop who she was becoming. And maybe that was the worst part. I hadn't lost her to a mistake. I'd lost her to a version of herself that didn't need me anymore. The next morning, I made her coffee. Handed it to her without comment. She kissed my cheek, oblivious. Then she asked if I could run by the post office. "I have a deadline," she said, smiling like nothing in her world was shifting. But mine already had. And the only thing keeping it from collapsing completely was that she still believed I didn't know. 3 days passed. I said nothing. I smiled when I had to. I laughed when she made jokes at dinner, even when my jaw felt like it had been wired shut. I answered her texts, folded laundry, vacuumed the hallway. I was the picture of a husband who didn't suspect a thing. But underneath that, I was slowly constructing something else, not a plan, not revenge, not even confrontation. Just awareness. A quiet map of how long this had been going on and how many lies she had told to keep it alive. The problem with pretending you don't know is that you start noticing everything. Her shower lasting a little longer after evening yoga. Her new interest in black lace that had never once made it into our bedroom. Her sudden defensiveness about privacy, like a teenager guarding a diary. But what tipped everything wasn't even something she did. It was a notification she forgot to clear. On Tuesday morning, she left for work early. Said she had a team breakfast at the office. I didn't believe her, obviously, but I didn't follow her. I'd stopped needing confirmation. I already had more than most people ever get. Instead, I stayed home and checked the family laptop, the one she used only occasionally when hers needed updates. It was an older machine, rarely touched, but still connected to our shared Dropbox from years ago when we used to sync photos from vacations. I hadn't opened it in months. I wasn't even sure it still worked. But when I launched it, a sync began, automatic. And suddenly, new folders started appearing. Not labeled anything obvious, of course. Just dates, places, names I didn't recognize. One folder stood out, Vermont. We hadn't been to Vermont. Ever. Inside were 8 files. Most were photos, nature shots, bland landscapes, one of her standing on a balcony wrapped in a hotel robe, a man's shoulder just barely visible behind her. But one file was a voice memo. I clicked play. Her voice came through, clear but tired. Read, I can't keep doing this. I feel like I'm slipping. Every time I look at him, I think of what we've done, and it's like he knows. He doesn't say anything, but it's in his face. I hate this. I hate lying. But I don't want to give up what we have. The message ended there. No resolution. No second take. It had been sent, saved, stored, and now synced to the one device she'd forgotten about. She must have thought it was disconnected, that it wouldn't update anymore, that I wouldn't check. But I did. And the most disturbing part? The timestamp said it was recorded 7 months ago. Not recent. Not post-affair. Not in the thick of it. This was early, when it had just started, which meant she hadn't been torn or unsure like I'd imagined. She'd already chosen, months ago, and still came home, curled beside me each night, asked me to pick up almond milk, asked me if I'd watered the plants, told me she loved me as if the word meant the same thing it used to. I sat in front of the laptop until the screen dimmed, until her voice had played 3 more times, until I finally accepted that the only person still clinging to the idea of us was me. I made a choice that morning, not to confront her, not yet, but to give her the space to lie to my face one final time with nowhere to hide. I wanted to see it, not because I didn't believe it, but because some sick part of me needed to feel it for real, not just through a screen or muffled recording. I wanted to hear the false kindness in her voice, the casual betrayal dressed up as routine. So I set a trap, simple, elegant. I made a dinner reservation for 2 at a quiet little French place we used to go to on anniversaries. The kind of place that still dimmed the lights and gave you warm bread in a basket, where they remembered your name and asked how you'd been. I booked it under her name, not mine. I called the hostess, gave her Marlene's full name, and said it was for her and her husband. I asked if she could repeat it back to me. She did. Then I waited. That afternoon, I told Marlene I had a late meeting and might get home after 10. She nodded, barely interested. Said she had a girls' night with someone I'd never met and would probably crash on the couch watching bad movies. I just smiled, kissed her cheek, and left. At 7:03 p.m., I was already seated at the restaurant, a private table in the back, facing the door, hidden behind a planner. I'd slipped the hostess a 20 to keep quiet if anyone asked who was there early. She just gave a tight nod and looked a little too pleased to be part of something secret. The waiters moved quietly. I sipped sparkling water and checked my watch more times than I could count. At 7:21, the door opened. I knew it was them before I saw them. I don't know how, maybe it was the laugh, maybe it was the sharp rhythm of Reed's voice. But when they stepped in together, smiling, casually close, I felt everything in me sink like an anchor. She wore a black dress I hadn't seen before. Hair curled. Lipstick darker than usual. She looked stunning. He wore that same smug half-beard that made him look like he never questioned his place in the world. They walked to the hostess. I heard Marlene say her name. Heard the hostess pause. Look confused. Then politely gesture toward the table in the back, my table. I saw her glance toward me. And in that instant, everything slowed down. She locked eyes with me, mid-stride, still holding Reed's arm. Her mouth opened slightly. Her step stuttered. She wasn't ready. I was. I stood slowly. Calm. Didn't say a word. Just placed my napkin on the table and pulled out my phone. Her face went pale before I even touched the screen. She knew. Somehow, she knew I'd seen it all, maybe not everything, but enough. Reed looked confused. Started to speak. I raised a hand slightly, not even looking at him, and said, I don't think either of you should sit. He froze. Marlene swallowed hard. Her voice was barely audible. What are you doing here? I looked at her for what felt like forever and said, I made a reservation. You just showed up with the wrong man. She blinked. Twice. Then let go of Reed's arm like it had burned her. He started to protest, some arrogant line about misunderstandings, but I ignored him. I turned to the hostess and said, "The table's yours again." Then I walked past them, out the door, out into the night air that finally felt like it belonged to me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even look back. But as I turned the corner and disappeared from view, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. For the first time in a long time, she was the one left standing in confusion. And I was the one already gone. The silence after that dinner didn't last long. The next morning, before I'd even finished my coffee, she called me. I let it ring. She called again, then texted, "Please, just talk to me." Then another one, minutes later, "Can we meet somewhere private?" I didn't answer. That night, she came home early. I heard the front door open like it had hundreds of times before, but this time, she paused in the hallway. No keys tossed in the bowl. No sigh of relief like after a long day. She just stood there. I stayed in the kitchen, cutting up an apple like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't a stranger now. She walked in slowly, like a guest in her own house. Her makeup was off, her hair undone. I looked up, calm, steady, and said, "Didn't expect you back so soon." She didn't sit, just hovered like she might float away if I didn't speak again. "Mason," she said softly, "I don't know what to say." And for once, I didn't try to help her. I let her sit in the discomfort. Then she asked the one question I didn't expect. "When did you find out?" I wiped the knife, set it down, and leaned on the counter. "The cafe. By your office. I was sitting behind you." That was the start. Her face crumbled like glass. Not dramatic, not crocodile tears, just quiet collapse. "I was going to end it," she whispered. "I was trying to. I thought I could pull away." "But you didn't," I said. She nodded. "No, I didn't." There was nothing left to argue. No raised voices. No blame games. Just a truth neither of us could bend back into shape. "Why?" I asked. "After all these years?" She stared at the floor and said, "Because you loved me like I was better than I actually was. And part of me hated that." I said nothing. That was the closest thing to honesty she'd given me in years. After a long silence, she said, "What now?" I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Now, you leave with what you came with. Nothing more." She blinked, stunned. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't cold. I was done. Truly done. That night, she packed a small bag and left. No screaming. No begging. Just footsteps on the stairs and the quiet click of the door behind her. The next morning, I woke up in a house that finally felt still, not hollow, not haunted, just mine. For a few days, the silence was heavy. But then, something shifted. I opened the windows, cleaned out the closets, threw out the scarf. I donated the wine glasses we never used. I started walking in the evenings again. No destination, no soundtrack, just the rhythm of my own steps. And then something I never expected happened. I ran into someone. Her name was Elise, a bookstore owner with ink on her fingers and a sarcastic smile. She asked if I liked obscure poetry. I said no, and for the first time in months, I laughed. Not politely, not bitterly, just laughed. We talked. Then we kept talking. No urgency, no pretending. Just two people with pasts, standing still long enough to feel present again. It's been 6 months since the night I saw Marlene walk into that restaurant. I haven't seen her since. Not once. She left a few messages at first, then stopped. I never responded. Not because I was angry, but because I had nothing left to say. I don't regret the years we had, but I'm not mourning them anymore. I'm just living. And it turns out, that's enough. Sometimes, moving on doesn't look like fireworks. Sometimes, it looks like a man walking past a cafe without flinching, ordering a coffee, and remembering how far he's come since the day everything fell apart, and how somehow he ended up freer than he ever imagined.